the one, the only, from The Athletic, Sam Amick. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, gentlemen.
How are you?
Doing fine. How are you?
I am on the beautifully curated Athletic app that I use because, of course, I subscribe twice. And I'm looking because you can favorite your favorite authors. And, of course, number one for me, no offense to Jason Jones or Matt Barrows, but there's Sam Amick right there. So I'm looking right now. Draymond on the Warriors' youth and real struggles. Nets had players only meeting about Simmons. Inside the Nets building frustration with Simmons. Donovan Mitchell unplugged, NBA executives poll. Here we go. De'Aaron Fox feels stars are aligning. Can we get more coverage, Sam, maybe, of the greatest story in the NBA?
Listen, as much as I appreciate your loyalty to me individually, you need to favorite my guy.
Anthony Slater did a wonderful piece, but I'm talking specifically about you. Slater does a wonderful job.
We want more Sam.
Sam, you control the narrative when it comes to that. I think every piece you do should be on the Kings until they start losing, which won't happen.
All right, well, if I do something, and the wheels have been turning a bit about, if I do something, what it might look like. And you know me, like I enjoy the game, and I do get into the game itself. Slater is a lot more of a tactician than I am coverage wise, but I am fascinated by the light beam. I am team light beam.
Yeah.
I think team light. It is from a morale standpoint in terms of the city and the fans. I'm not gonna lie, like I've gotten a kick out of it. You walk out of the arena and you see that thing going, and people are looking up and. You certainly, for Kings fans' sake, hope that, there's not a stretch where that light does not see the light of day for a few weeks. But no, it's been fun. They're playing great, man.
Yes, we're talking with Sam Amick from The Athletic, and all guests come to you via the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. You have been out there, Sam, watching this team, and I know you had said early on that you got the sense that the vibe was a little bit different, and I think that's accurate. But now the results at least look a little bit different for the time being. You believe in it? You believe in what you're seeing at the moment and what this team has potential to be?
It's not going to be like this the rest of the year. The defense has got to improve, and that's the thing that is probably somewhat, alarming is maybe a little strong, but I mean, they're still, I believe, 26th in defensive rating for the season. So they are scoring the heck out of the ball. And that's kind of the inverse of what Mike Brown had talked about wanting to establish when he first came. And he also, to his defense, no pun intended, admitted that it's going to take a while. So the offense is lights out, I think second in the NBA, and they're deep. And I mean, my God, you got a Terrence Davis coming out of nowhere to give you 30 plus. The offense is no problem. The defense, they're going to have to defend. That's the NBA. You can't be a good team unless you at least find your way into the top 20 in defensive rating.
Sam, just switching off because this is kind of Kings related. They annihilated the Nets, and I'm sure you saw you've had a long relationship with Kevin Durant. I'm sure you saw his comments floating around yesterday. Am I wrong? I didn't come out of that thinking that he threw people under the bus, Sam, and I'm curious your take. I actually thought it was a fairly lucid, transparent, and honest Kevin Durant. I came away thinking he is comfortable there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think he's in an interesting place. Like, I mean, I have no problem at all with his perspective, and this is from the interview he did with Chris Haynes at Bleacher Report. The perspective about life in general, that during the pandemic he didn't know if he'd play again, and then after he tore his Achilles, you kind of appreciate the game. And so he was basically making the point that I'm staying in the moment and I'm happy to be playing. I get that, and that's great, but for the Nets purposes, that's not great for this season. I mean, listen, he's doing nothing wrong. The guy's playing his butt off, and he doesn't have help. And the question around the league is, to quote one executive that I, wrote about last week, at what point does Kevin say, to get me the F out or something along those lines? And, the league is waiting for that moment because as we saw in that game against the Kings, At times it's ugly. Now, they had won a couple of games. The vibe with their team had been a little bit better. Jacques Vaughn seemed to have made an impact and seemed to have a good approval rating within the locker room, but they looked pretty terrible the other night.
Yeah. How broken do you think they are at the moment? I know, like you said, it did seem like they had a little bit of a reprieve. They will get Kyrie back, Ben Simmons. Just, I don't know, Sam, your opinion on just where the Nets are and where can they get to, because obviously they don't want to be this kind of team right now.
No, I just don't see it. I think they're going to be a bad team. Even when Kyrie was out there, they weren't playing well before. And I do think he'll probably come back on, I think Sunday it is against Memphis. But, the Ben Simmons thing, which we obviously dove pretty heavy into, it's just not great. Like, I appreciated, we had a good conversation about his health, and he came off as pretty darn genuine. But then it's the uncomfortable reality is that the reason we had the conversation in the first place was because we had been hearing so much about his teammates and coaches being frustrated with him and not necessarily believing all of his physical stuff. And that's a pretty similar theme from the Philadelphia experience. So, that part of it, Ben the other night hits 5 of 7 shots, has 11 points, and people are acting like, oh man, he's looking much, much better. And it's like, okay, if that's much better, then, he was supposed to be one of their stars and obviously is having a hard time right now.
Sam Amick with us. Back to the Kings. When you put your finger on it, depth, De'Aaron Fox, Mike Brown, Kevin Huerter. I know the answer should be all of it, but is there something that sticks out more than anything with you with the Kings' fast start?
Of those three, we've chronicled the Fox stuff pretty well, but listen, he's just playing really well. The Warriors win they had, I loved how late in the fourth quarter, I think he was sitting around 17 points. And like, if it's the old days and you're kind of giving up on De'Aaron defensively, then you're thinking, man, he's got to pick it up. He's just not scoring enough. But in that game, it was like, you know what? Steph Curry is not going nuclear because De'Aaron is actually trying to defend. Yeah. But then when you get to clutch time, which I saw, I'm sure you guys saw this, Stat Muse tweet the other day about how De'Aaron's leading the league in clutch scoring, last 5 minutes of a game in a tight game. And he's hitting big buckets, every single time out. So De'Aaron's play would probably top the list for me. But then a close second, Kevin Huerter is having a wonderful year.
Yeah. And,
again, I'll keep couching everything with, like all the rest of them, he got to defend, and he's a guy that is, I think, a solid defender. But shooting, I think, 53% from three on high volume. He was just a fantastic pickup.
You mentioned the Warriors, who the Kings just played. They lost again last night, Sam. 0-8 on the road. And kind of that same list, is it Mike Brown's departure? Is it the reserves that they lost a year ago? What do you see as their key reason to their slow start?
It's actually the inverse of the Kings' depth is helping them. The Warriors' lack of depth is killing them. They lose Otto Porter Jr. They lose Gary Payton II. Even one that doesn't get talked about as much. Nemanja Bjelica had some pretty decent stints for them last year, and they just had veterans that gave them optionality with the second units, and they had defense. And right now, it's off the tracks, I guess, pun intended, with their 2 timeline strategy, where they're trying to merge, their Hall of Fame core with the young guns. And James Wiseman now gets sent to the G League, and Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody are not getting time. It's really bad, honestly. Like, it's going to make for an interesting trade deadline for the Warriors, if not sooner, because, Joe Lacob, their owner, was the biggest proponent of the 2 timeline approach. And I just think he's not going to be thrilled once he has to come to grips with the reality that it's not working. And the idea that they might need to think about packaging some of these young guys to go get some help. That's going to undercut the next generation as Joe Lacob saw it. So, what does Bob Myers do in their front office? That question is becoming more and more legitimate.
That's weird. An owner's vision not materializing on the court.
Are you just gonna do your victory lap because for once the Warriors owner's having a harder time than the Kings owner?
Just saying, man. Let Bob Myers do his job. Let me ask you this. You know, of all the things you brought up, we talked about this a lot earlier, and maybe I'm just poking my head in a place that's not necessary. But gosh, isn't the thing that pops out, Sam? Isn't the thing that pops out more than anything Draymond Green and Jordan Poole? And Jason and I were talking about this earlier. We were saying that's like the athlete version of your spouse cheating on you. Like, you can go to counseling, you can say sorry, you can cry and hug and all that, but every fight for the rest of your life, that's gonna. Well, remember when you did the thing with the neighbor? Like, that's gonna come up. It's irreconcilable. Like, why are we
really specific, Dave?
I know. I thought so too, Sam.
Well, I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying, though, but I've seen a movie. Here's the thing. How are we not saying he knocked out Jordan Poole and their chemistry's screwed?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Now, admittedly, my first answer to that would be that if you ask people on the Warriors, even scouts who watch the Warriors and whatever, NBA people, Draymond is by and large just considered to be playing fairly well. Mm-hmm. Jordan Poole has picked up his game, and really the other elephant in the room that is going to become more of a story is that Jordan Poole, at least for now, is a better player than Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
But because of Klay's, history with the franchise, he's not going to lose his job. But the other night when Klay didn't play, Jordan goes crazy, 30 plus. So Jordan playing well, Draymond playing well, it's hard to say, yeah, that fight is the reason that they're not in a good place. And trust me, I've tried to get the answer to that, partly because, honestly, just being real, like when I had that interview with Draymond the other day, I took some flack in the comment section for not talking to Draymond about the fight. Now, first of all, anybody who knows the business is like, all right, he's addressed it several times.
Right.
And he's just like, yes, we talked offline about that element, and he is trying very hard to not talk about it anymore. And I get that. So that's why it wasn't in the interview. But I also felt comfortable talking to him about everything else because everybody around them says it's the everything else that is actually the problem, which is the roster. You look at Steph, it's not impacting Steph. He's playing the best ball of his life. Klay is just playing terribly. The other night, I know we probably got to go, but like when he left Golden One Center, I thought this spoke volumes. I was in the hallway talking to somebody, and Klay walked right by me, said hello real quick. All I said was, hi Klay, how you hanging in? And I don't even think I said hanging in. I said, how you doing? And as he walks away, he says, Sam, I'm playing basketball in November. It's a beautiful thing. The shots will fall. The shots will fall. And it was like, man, like, who are you trying to convince here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's struggling. So, the fight, it's hard to unpack what impact it is still having. But, surprisingly, a lot of people don't think that's the reason here.
All right. That's Sam Amick. Insight there. Only at The Athletic. Get Sam's insight on 29 NBA teams right there at The Athletic. Download the app and subscribe today. Buddy, I'm sure we'll talk offline, but happy Thanksgiving. Love to the family, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
All right, boys. Appreciate you.
All right,
Thank you.
Take care. Did he not